So you may have saw recently this video from Tucker Carlson. Now, Tucker Carlson went to Moscow back in February to talk with Vladimir Putin, and people thought that was like extreme, that was chaotic, that a man of his stature, how dare you, that's treasonous, an American, especially a journalist, going to discuss the war with Vladimir Putin because Vladimir Putin is this boogeyman that they have cultivated. Well, Tucker Carlson is back in Moscow again, and being a journalist, being an independent, he's able to tell us a lot about what's the true intentions of what this war is implementing, and he's going to explain exactly why right now we're in a worst position imaginable when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, how we're developing ourselves into a hot war with Russia and the potential of nuclear annihilation. Listen to this.
In the week since we left Russia, Moscow, where we are now, in February, after interviewing Vladimir Putin, we've watched from the United States as the Biden administration has driven the U.S. ever closer to a nuclear conflict with Russia, the country that possesses the world's largest nuclear arsenal. It has accelerated ever since, and it's reached its apogee so far in the weeks after Trump's election. He's now the president-elect. In that time, just a few weeks ago, the Biden administration, American military personnel, launched missiles into mainland Russia and killed at least a dozen Russian soldiers. So we are, unbeknownst to most Americans, in a hot war with Russia, an undeclared war, a war you did not vote for and that most Americans don't want, but that is ongoing. And because of that war, because of the fact that the U.S. military is killing Russians in Russia right now, we are closer to nuclear war than at any time in history. Far closer than we were during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That would mean the elimination of Russia, the United States, and most of the rest of the world. We felt there must be someone behind the scenes in Washington working to make sure that this conflict doesn't become a nuclear holocaust. But we found out that no, in fact, there is nobody. Tony Blinken, the current Secretary of State, cut off all contact between the U.S. and Russian governments. There is no back channel, there is no conversation, and there hasn't been for more than 2 years. That's shocking. Meanwhile, most Americans have no access to any perspective other than that granted to them by NBC News and the New York Times. They don't know how close we are. They don't know the Russian perspective. We've been trying for over a year to get that perspective out to American news consumers. We've also tried for over a year to get an interview with Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. We've attacked that from a bunch of different angles. We've spoken to a lot of different people around him, had dinner with them. We've been in talks continuously, and those efforts have been thwarted by the U.S. government. The American embassy in Kiev, which our tax dollars pay for, told the Zelensky government, no, you may not do the interview. You can talk to CNN, you can't talk to us. So we've been unable to speak to him. So we came back to Moscow yesterday to interview the foreign minister of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, the longest serving foreign minister in the world. He's been a part of this government for 25 years. He's been in the diplomatic corps for over 40. And ask him, where exactly are we? Are we headed toward an unprecedented conflict between Russia and the United States? Is there any way to peel Russia back from the east, from the sphere of China, back into the west? Is that alliance permanent? And does the election of Donald Trump mean an end to this war, which is reshaping the world, the U.S. economy, the global economy, and risking the life of every person on this planet? Is that possible? We just walked out of that interview. It's absolutely fascinating. It's coming very soon. We hope you'll watch.
So that's fascinating. And only Tucker Carlson to be the only main person to actually address this issue. And being because he's a independent media figure now, because he has his own show and his own platform, he's able to have this conversation. And it's amazing. It is amazing that while we're being told here in North America and, like Canada, the United States, we're being told that we're protecting, the sovereignty of Ukraine, the democracy of Ukraine. You just heard him say that even the president of Ukraine cannot talk to certain media figures. They can't talk to Tucker Carlson. They can't have a conversation with Joe Rogan. But you're allowed to talk to CNN. You're allowed to talk to MSNBC. Why? So they can manipulate the narrative. So, let me get this straight. We're protecting the sovereignty of Ukraine by telling the president, the guy who's in charge of the country, to do exactly what we're doing. Exactly how we should be planning out that country. And considering the fact that Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, is not undoubtedly running America right now because Joe Biden is pretty much oatmeal at this point. The fact that he's president of the United States, shadowing the president of the United States, and is apparently also running the government of Ukraine right now by telling them who they can talk to. It is literally a mafia. It's literally a mafia. And what's sad about this is at least the mafia, the actual mafia knew when to back down as compared to this. So here's Ben Swan, another independent journalist who pointed this out, saying another $725 million to Ukraine, all so Ukraine can strike Russia with missiles and start World War III, or worse, a nuclear war. He says, what's the point? Who is running the White House? And will President-elect Trump inherit a hot war with the world's strongest nuclear power? And that's exactly intentionally what they're trying to do. They're trying to leave out, they're trying to duck out. Joe Biden is now ducking out of being president and hit the nuclear launch button as he's walking out of the White House. And he doesn't care anymore. He just doesn't care anymore because he's no longer president. He's no longer in control of the country. He's barely in control of his body. So Joe Biden's doing this as Donald Trump is coming in, and now they could say, oh, Donald Trump's now responsible for, nuclear warfare. And because of the fact that Donald Trump said in the campaign, and we hope that he promises, his campaign promise comes out, that he was going to scale back the war with Russia. He was going to have negotiations. He was going to sit down with Zelensky and Vladimir Putin and work something out. We hope that's the case. That's one of the reasons I, have some optimism when it comes to Trump being president again. We hope that's the case, and that's what a lot of people voted for. And that was the intention. So that's why Joe Biden and Antony Blinken escalated in this just few weeks here, because they know they're gonna lose this war. They might potentially lose this war. So they're going to escalate it to the point of no return, which is nuclear warfare, which is exactly what Tucker Carlson said. And the fact that there's no back channels to this. There's no back channels. Which, if people look back at the Cuban Missile Crisis, he pointed that out in the video. The Cuban Missile Crisis, one of the things that de-escalated that situation was the fact that the White House had communications. They had a phone directly to the Kremlin to talk directly to Russia to de-escalate tensions. To say that at a certain point, if you're crossing that line, hey, we need to talk this out. We need to de-escalate that situation. That has not been the case for any of this. Not been the case for any of this. There's no de-escalation in prosperity. And here is Antony Blinken himself, just completely careless, just completely out of it, to reacting to the possibility of nuclear warfare, that he is deliberately putting us on an ultimate suicide mission and putting the entire world at jeopardy just to have this play fight with Russia. Listen to this.
Even with the money, even with the munitions, there have to be people on the front lines to deal with the Russian aggression. Ukraine has hard decisions to make about further mobilization, but these are necessary decisions. We have a commitment, though, for every person, every soldier that Ukraine mobilizes. We're committed to making sure that they have the training and the equipment they need to effectively defend the country.
As the death toll in Ukraine alone is over 1 million people. Over 1 million people have died. The average military age right now is almost 50 years of age because they have wiped out and slaughtered the acceptable military age men, the prime, reproductive age men and women who have served in the Ukraine war, completely annihilated because of idiots like him, because of bloodthirsty maniacs and warmongers who are completely detached from morality or reality, for that matter, and are able to just openly state this. Hey, we don't care. We're just going to go with this. We have to do this. We have to do this. And he's saying this at the NATO summit. He's saying this at NATO to say that we have to go full force into the possibility of nuclear annihilation. We have no choice. Any normal human being would look at that and go, holy shit. That's why they had the phone. That's why back in the Cuban Missile Crisis days, JFK had direct contact with the Kremlin to de-escalate these tensions. We're not doing that. Nobody's doing that. The United States is definitely not doing this, and neither, sadly, is Canada. Because if you may remember, during the NATO summit that happened in Montreal when people were protesting, Justin Trudeau allocated for $19.5 billion in support of building up this nuclear war. $19.5 billion. That's annually, by the way. That's not just a one-time investment. That's annually. So that means our military budget succeeds almost to $20 billion annually. And if we're able to pop out $19.5 billion to send out to Ukraine to possibly kill every one of us and build us up to nuclear warfare, then there should be no excuse, none whatsoever, of Canadians sleeping in tents. There should be no excuse. There should be no tent cities across Canada. That's just my theory of this. If we could pop out $19.5 billion without a debate or any accountability or any measure of, oh my God, how are we going to afford this? None of it. Just popped it out right there. And if we could able to do that, then Justin Trudeau staring down a veteran and saying that he's a cost burden to society is unacceptable. How we have 10 cities across this country is unacceptable. How we have 2 million people a month, 2 million people a month at food banks across Canada is unacceptable. If you can get almost $20 billion off to Ukraine, just like that, then we could take a portion of that and invest that to Canadians. Invest that to people back here at home. Invest that into food banks. Invest that into housing. Right now, our government's telling us right now that we just don't have the resources to do it right now. We don't have the resources to care for the veterans. We don't have the resources to contribute to everybody. Oh, you'll get, a $250 check to shut you up. But $19.5 billion to put us into World War III. And that's done by Justin Trudeau. That's done by Chrystia Freeland. That's done by our Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly. That's happening with Antony Blinken. They just put $725 million on top of the billions and billions of dollars that they've already wasted in this war. And what good is this doing? What good is this doing? It's jeopardizing our national security. It's jeopardizing the possibility that now the doomsday clock is closer than ever. And we're not backing down. There's no retaliation. There's no remorse. There's no outcome to this. There's no strategy. There's no way to win this war. This is a full-out suicide run at this point. Which is exactly what they wanted. Exactly what they wanted. Because we have bloodthirsty warmongers that don't give a damn about humanity whatsoever. They don't care about Ukrainian lives. They barely care about Canadian lives. They don't care about American lives. But we want to go full out to try to destroy Russia. Even if that means destroying the entire existence of human life on Earth. And here's even what's more devastating. So this guy, Dmitry Medvedev, hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, turns out outgoing State Secretary Blinken is a rare kind of degenerate. He's demanding Ukraine lowering its conscription age to continue receiving U.S. assistance. This means 18-year-olds will now be dying, but the Biden administration couldn't care less. And here's the press release. The White House pressuring Ukraine to draft 18-year-olds, so teenagers. Hey, put down your, iPhones, your Nintendo Switches. Let's forget about TikTok right now. Go off and die for the United States. Go off and die for BlackRock. Because that's what they're doing right now. They're now drafting because they killed off over 1 million eligible Ukrainian soldiers. Over 1 million. They have killed off everybody. Ukraine is pretty much destroyed. The more they have retaliated into this country. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And the whole reason for that is because this goes far back as 2014 when we overthrew the Ukrainian government, installed a comic who ran on a peace ticket, and then became a warlord to comply with NATO, to comply with the Azov battalion that we have orchestrated, that Canadian soldiers trained to operate in Ukraine, and we can continuously annihilate that country. And now you have people like Lindsey Graham saying, well, look at the bright side. We'll get the minerals. We'll get the mineral wealth. Because it's not going to Russia. It's not going to China. So we'll just take it. We'll just kill off an entire population and steal their resources. Which is exactly every single war we've been through for the last 20 years. Iraq was for the oil. Afghanistan was for the opium. Libya was for resources. Syria is for natural gas. Every single war that I have been around for, that I've known in my lifetime, has been some sort of business investment. And now you're seeing it full front that they're just going to wipe out the entire population. They don't even care who they spare. Whether it being teenagers, whether it being old people, whether it being us back here at home. Because once kaboom happens, that's it. It's over. It's done. But good to know that, Elon Musk and some other billionaires could probably travel to Mars and they'll start their own society. So they don't care. They don't care about nuclear war. They don't care about the Big Bang. But any of us that actually, give a damn and look at people as people don't want this to happen. And now they're getting 18-year-olds being drafted into this. And a lot of this also has to do with the media coverage of this. So this is interesting. So someone put this together. This is The Guardian. Two different headlines just showing the complete turnaround of how they're purposely manipulating people to be favorable of one war and discipline to another. So The Guardian back in 2023, November, saying the IDF says it has entered Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital in target operation against Hamas. That's what The Guardian said back in November of last year. This is July of 2024. So this year, they said no words for this. Horror over Russia bombing of Kiev Children's Hospital. So, almost very similar scenarios, but Russia retaliating over a children's hospital in Kiev is far worse than Israel and the IDF bombing an entire hospital, not just of children, but of families, an entire neighborhood. I wonder why that is. Why do we have such selective favorability towards one country to another? Maybe that's because we want to build the perspective. We want to manufacture consent for people to say that Russia is only the awful one and people of Israel are doing the right thing. They're self-defending themselves, annihilating an entire country and population. And Ukrainians are just innocent people. They're just the innocent bystanders. And isn't it amazing that they have so much, sympathy? They have so much emotional struggle when it comes to Russia coming into Ukraine, but they don't have the same emotional struggles or reaction when it comes to Israel bombing Palestine. They're not worried about, IDF soldiers storming into neighborhoods and bombing children, mothers, women. All these different people, they're not worried about that. But no, Russia coming in and doing that to Ukrainians. Oh my God, the horror. And that's where we showed that video by Dmitry, the reporter in Montreal, where he asked a bunch of the NATO people, are Ukrainian lives more important than Palestinian lives? And none of them could answer. None of them can answer. And I would tell you that none of their lives matter. Nobody's lives matter. Because when it comes to warfare, when it comes to this outrageous just catastrophe on humanity, the only people that want to go to war, that are begging for this war, are the people that don't fight it. And that's the top 1%. That's the oligarchs. That's the geopolitical masterminds, the deviant monsters that crawl around to decide, hey, we're going to sacrifice these people and we're going to blow up these countries. We're going to blow up these neighborhoods and cause mass warfare, cause a mass slaughter to these people for our own whims. And that's where they get the news media to alter these headlines, very, very similar scenarios, to allow this to happen. So just how horrific the whole process is. That we're in a hot war with Russia, and this is all in contrast to the CIA, the FBI, NATO, and all these infiltrators coming together, the military-industrial complex, people like Victoria Nuland, Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, Melania Jolie, all these people coming together to basically manufacture warfare with Russia, which is something that they wanted to do since the end of the Cold War. They've wanted to retaliate against Russia again. They thought they were going to crush the Russian economy. It didn't happen. And now here we are at the point of World War III, at the point of possible nuclear annihilation. And normally, any sane human being would look at that and think of calculations to retaliate. But no, they want to go full force because they just don't care. These are moralless, soulless, piece of goddamn garbage people that have no obligation on anyone's life whatsoever. And that's why they pretend to have crocodile tears for the people of Ukraine or the people of Israel or the people anywhere in the world and pretend that they care about humanity and they care about democracy and they can use those play words to fool people when really in the end, we're all just, useless.